Welcome to another episode of the Online Prosperity Experience podcast. You're about to hear your host, Prosper Taravinga's powerful digital marketing strategies and actionable tactics that you can use right now. Prosper has helped more than 50,000 people from over 10 countries to create meaningful businesses that are profitable and enjoyable. Listen to this podcast so that you too can build your own business with less stress and overwhelm. Let's get started.
Here's how the concrete jungle is aiding the failure of a lot of businesses. Now, this is probably a far-fetched claim, and I haven't got science to prove that this could be happening. But hey, I'm going to be talking from my own experience in how if you just step outside to the great outdoors or go outside in nature, you might get a lot of inspiration to create a business that's profitable and enjoyable. Take a look around you. Maybe you're working from an office right now. There's artificial light. There's probably artificial air that you can switch on or switch off at the touch of a button. The light comes on when you want it to, and it's all artificial, you know what I mean? But in nature, everything happens in its own time, okay? So the sun comes up when it's supposed to be coming up, and it goes down when it's supposed to be going down. And when it goes down, it means it's coming up for other people. I mean, depending on your philosophy on the geometric, composition of the earth, whether it's flat or round, whatever you think right now. But for me to prove my case, in nature, everything happens in its own due time, in its own due course, and everything happens when it's supposed to be happening. So if you really want a business that's profitable and enjoyable, that goes and abides with the laws of nature, then I suggest you take yourself outdoors once in a while, just so you can see how other entrepreneurs, the birds, the bees, the ants are actually creating their own empires. And then that you might actually get some more inspiration from them. Okay, so entrepreneurship obviously doesn't just necessarily mean you creating your coaching, your consulting, your training, your information, your expertise, and your coach or consultant, and selling it to other people that are also looking for those services. But it's actually creating value. When you are able to create value within an ecosystem, that's entrepreneurship. Okay, so if you go outside in that great outdoors, you would notice ants are creating an ecosystem that helps birds be able to build their own nests, and those birds are helping snakes, and then the snakes are also contributing to the growth and evolution of other species that are around them. So if you're just looking at your own content, your own website, your own podcast, you might think that you are not contributing much. I really encourage you to step outside and really go into the great outdoors. First of all, you just be inspired by nature in and of itself, because everything is just in its right place, and nature has so much to offer you in terms of a classroom if you open up your eyes. Okay, so you might be wondering where I'm going with this, but I really want you to just step outside and get the entrepreneurship lessons that the great outdoors can actually teach us. I was born in Zimbabwe, and that's a place in Africa where obviously growing up, we didn't have toys as much as, my kids now have. My kids have a dedicated toy room, and if my parents would see that today, they'll probably just look at me and shake their heads. Or if some other hungry kid from Africa would look at that, they don't even have maybe, a roof above their head and things of that nature. Whereas my kids have a room that they only go into maybe for an hour or two a week. I'm not talking about a day, a week, that is dedicated to housing our consumerism in the form of us loving our kids. So now I've actually gone in and started wanting to work with my daughter and help her in the whole starting her own business and entrepreneurship. But that's a story for another day. Today we're talking about nature. So nature is also very confusing for anybody who was pretty much born in the first world and also had to experience the last couple of years in the form of the pandemic. The reason why I'm saying this is because for the last 2 years, people were being told to not leave their homes or travel any distances that were further than 10 kilometers from their front door. So what that meant is, people could not explore, people could not go out and meet other people and really experience the awe of nature. All right. Now, this awe of nature is what actually makes people become inspired to want more, be more, and have more, because you feel a sense of contribution, you feel a sense of belonging to something bigger than yourself. Look at how ants collaborate, bringing in leaf by leaf so that they have food for the winter and things of that nature. Okay, so this whole feeling of awe is a very powerful thing, and a lot of coaches and consultants, they don't give themselves this enough. All right, some people get inspired by watching Elon Musk getting accolades or being spoken about in the media. Some people get this by watching other people winning a Grammy award and experience that. Some people get this from just watching stuff on the internet but not actually experiencing it themselves, because once your mind has been opened and has been exploded or has exploded, or you've met something else, it's like elastic, you know what I mean? It takes a while for you to go back to where it was. So this whole feeling of awe is a very powerful thing, and we should always be seeking it. And the cheapest place to seek this awe is in the jungle. So you're probably doing that right now. You're probably walking your dog, or you're probably just walking in the park and you've got your headphones and you're listening to the Online Prosperity Experience. I applaud you, because you're doing something that will leave you better, than when you started this podcast. Okay, so if you haven't subscribed to this Online Prosperity Experience, please do so, because I take people on a journey and I get them to understand how just looking around them can actually make them better entrepreneurs, better parents, better business owners, and people that actually have a business that's profitable and enjoyable. And like I keep repeating, the feeling of awe is a very powerful thing, and we should always consistently seek it out. You know what I mean? So we can feel it when we maybe watch somebody doing the extraordinary, maybe like a magician performing, or maybe like a gymnast performing an incredible feat, or maybe the birth of a child, or if we actually go into nature itself, and it's the cheapest and cleanest way of actually, experiencing this feeling of awe. And the moment of awe, and this awe, maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong. It's spelled AWE, okay? Ow, oh, whatever you want to call it today. But this moment of awe is very important, and it's got a profound effect on us. A lot of learning happens when we are in awe. Okay, it's a little like a reset button, because then your mind has experienced something it has never experienced before. It's a moment of learning. It's an educational moment. It's a coaching moment, and it actually allows you to start viewing things from a different perspective, because when you see things that you never sort of knew existed or had an idea but never actually seen them working, like when you as kids, I did mention we grew up in the African savannah, and we would maybe cut open the ant hills, and then we'll see the whole network of how these ants are pulling things down and things of that nature. And we would actually make games to see which ant reaches the bottom the quickest. All right. And that was how we played. And we were just always awestruck as to how ingenious these little creatures were and how enterprising they were in order for them to actually collaborate and provide for, the greater sustenance of the whole species. They were not just doing things for their own food, because apparently ants carry maybe 10 times more their weight, or at any given moment. So when that all happens inside of you as an entrepreneur, let me tell you something. You start viewing things afresh. You start making conclusions, and things start making sense in your own heads. Because look at what we have right now. We are just jumbled up with worries and thoughts, and it takes away a lot of our time and brain power trying to solve these problems. Whereas if you just take a walk in nature, somehow, magically, you might see a leaf falling, you might see an apple falling, and then you can actually redefine what science means to humanity. And I'm talking about you, Isaac Newton. You know what I mean? You never know what nature can bring to you that will actually then give you the answer to certain things that have been affecting you for a while. For myself, perhaps, because I don't have access to gymnasts or magicians that I've mentioned that maybe give people out, and I resent going to get my awe inspired by maybe a movie or something of that nature. I've just got maybe one thing that I do. I find awe in nature. I literally take my kids every single Sunday. We go for a walk around the family, around our neighborhood, and we're exploring things. And now I've got a little game with my now 3-year-old. We pick up really nice rocks and we bring them home and then we paint them. And I've convinced her that, if we paint it and we keep it on some sort of a place, it might hatch into a dinosaur. Things of that nature. Now we've got a culture, me and my little girl, that we have, built together just because we're going into nature and looking at clues as to how things actually function. And I'm finding, coachable moments at any given moment that I can actually pass on, the things that I have experienced with my kids. I mean, if you listen to some of my podcasts, I usually find inspiration and fascination, especially of the business kind, in the oddest of places, simply predicated on the fact that I wasn't born here. So everything to me is brand new, you know what I mean? And then I try and make sense of what it is. And in the process, I create systems, tools, and ways of understanding why that is happening. And in the process, I also help other people understand that. I can go into a dentist's office, or I can go and watch maybe a magic show. Or the last time when things were open, I went in and I watched Cirque du Soleil, and I was just really fascinated about everything and the synchronicity of all that was happening. And I was like putting it into like a system and a business context. And my wife is just like, just enjoy. I'm one of those people that if you take to an event, I'm looking around and looking at how they brought everything in there. I'm looking around and seeing how exactly everything functions. Or if I'm sitting in a boardroom, I'm that guy who's just looking at the table and wondering how they brought it through that door. And then I know it comes in as a flat pack, but have you ever thought of things like that when you're sitting around other people, or you're just looking at things as they are? So there's a lot of lessons that you might get in the environment or the nature around you. Instead of you just looking at walls in your room or in your office, just take a step outside and see what it is that you can find. It should be no surprise that every Sunday that I walk, even if it's in the urban outdoors where I go to, I always find something that I can actually find as a coachable moment for me and my daughters. Even if I don't go outside much, I actually take some of these lessons to heart. I actually remind my girls on certain things that we do and how they can actually interact with the environment around them. See, having been brought up in Africa, I used to live in a place called Victoria Falls, where if you are well versed with your animal kingdom, there's what's called the Big Five. So you've got your lion, your cheetah, your rhino, your elephant, and then the buffalo. These are just roaming around because people live harmoniously with nature. Like, I kid you not, I once woke up in the morning and an elephant was drinking from a swimming pool off of a place we were staying at the other day. So things like that happen. You can look up on TikTok or on YouTube and you can find that nature in other places is really, really, really close. And if you want to know how close nature is, look at the time when, people were locked down, during COVID, and all those wild animals were roaming in the streets of New York or some other, capital cities, just because people were not making noise and bringing in their worries and fears, projecting that onto nature. So when you go into the wild, you then start knowing, wait a minute, I'm not in a zoo. These animals that I'm coming across are not caged. They are wild animals. Now, how is that important? I live in Australia now, where we actually make it a point to go find, koalas, and we make it a point to go find kangaroos, in the bushes behind our home. Of course, that for me is a lesson that I want my kids to learn, that nature is all around us, right? We shouldn't be living in an artificial environment just simply because it's convenient. I mean, having been brought up in Africa, I haven't been attacked by a lion, or, you know what I mean? But I've hiked closer to where they live. One time, I actually had a snake go over my shoe while I was on on a trip around with my family. So you can actually imagine that nature is there. It's all around us. You need to actually confront it. You don't need to just seek it, only one day a year on Halloween. Walk into cobwebs. Just have nature all around you, just so that you, first of all, have an understanding that we are living in a vast universe where everything also needs to be surviving. And when a snake crossed over me, I mean, in Australia, everything that's around is designed to kill you. I actually got shocked. And, and since I'd never seen one in real life, since I'd come from Africa, it actually was, wow, oh, that was something else. But let me tell you something, that snake just slithered off without incident. But it made me realize that nature is for real. We may rarely encounter danger most of the time, but danger exists all around us if you seek it out, or if you open up your eyes to it. And it's good to be cognizant of that fact, because a lot of people do not, know how to react or how to act when something bad happens in their life. They haven't calloused their mind enough to be ready for when bad times come around in business. Just look at what happened in the last couple of years. A lot of people didn't even know what was going on, and they shut down their business because they had not prepared themselves that danger is all around us. I mean, in the business world, as a coach or consultant, 99% of the time you're dealing only with maybe nice people who play by the rules, people that we have carefully curated, who we want to work with, etc. You know what I mean? People that pay on time and respect us and things of that nature. And we seek out people like that. But guess what? Occasionally you meet a scumbag who refuses to pay you and otherwise wants to make trouble for you. I mean, don't proceed as if the world is out to get you, but be aware that there's little slithers of snakes out there. Sometimes they're just also running away from you, and you just so happen to wake them up from their slumber. Because this is what I'm trying to say. Spending time in Mother Nature will actually teach you a lot about how to succeed as an entrepreneur. And speaking of that snake was also trying to get somewhere. Maybe it was gonna find food for its, for its kids. And I was also trying to walk around with my kids. It shows you that everyone's path is different. Whatever we're doing in nature, if our paths cross, that doesn't necessarily mean we have to marry that person. That doesn't necessarily mean that we have to sell to that person, or we have to cry that that person have almost ripped us off, or whatever it is. Everyone is on a path. So, on the trails that I go on, at any given day of the week, there's usually serious hikers. You notice the people with all the equipment and the funny walking sticks, and they're walking, vigorously. And then there's, moms with their little toddlers out for a little stroll. There's people that are walking with their dogs. And I also see really serious trail runners and people with mountain bikes. And you're like, wait a minute, where are these people all going to? I mean, you maybe won't see me in any of those fancy categories because I'm a little bit too clumsy. But just like with entrepreneurship, man, no two people have the same path or approach. I always teach this to my kids. Look at the back of your hand right now. Look at the back of your hand. You can hear me slapping the back of my hand, right? Okay, look at the back of your hand. Look at how your fingers are placed on your hand. No two fingers on the same hand are of the same height. I repeat, no two fingers on the same hand are of the same height. And I'm going to say this with utmost love and respect, just in case you lost a finger or two or you lost your hand. But I'm just trying to say that within an average person, if you look at your hand, especially from the back, you will notice that your fingers are not all of the same height. So that means no two people are on the same path or you are going to use the same approach. So if you're comparing yourself to maybe other business owners or, Elon Musk or people that have gone ahead of you, stop. Their success is not your success. Their path is not your path. Maybe you'd never break to that $100,000 revenue. Maybe you're just meant to make $50,000, a year or things of that nature. But if you're happy, if you're actually contributing to the, happiness of other human beings, you, my friend, are doing the most. All right. So look at your own happiness. Look at your own flexibility. Look at your own work schedule. Don't pile on work just because you heard that it's the best practice. And usually when something is regarded as a best practice, it's usually the worst thing to be doing anyway, because you don't want to be doing what everybody else is doing. Otherwise, you're just a Me Too, has run, or whatever you call it these days. All right. Don't go on hiring people just because you've heard that growth is predicated by how many people are sitting on the table. Maybe you have other people sitting on that table wondering how that big table got into the boardroom in the first place. Only you know what your path to success is. So only when you go out there, you notice that, yes, you might be going the same direction, but everyone is doing different things. Some people are running, some are walking, some are in bikes that you can't even see, or in sports bikes or things of that nature. So that's why I'm saying, if you really want to have that spark of awe, go out in nature sometimes, you know what I mean? Because that feeling of awe is a very powerful thing. And look at how many lessons I've just even brought up just by talking about my Sunday walk with my girls. And one thing that happens when you're out there is your instincts are on high alert. And, you get very... as a human brain, our brain looks at fight or flight sort of setups, and if you can be out what are we talking about? In the nature, if you go out in nature, you've got heightened senses of perception. Every sound, every smell, you start hearing it. But if you're just sitting in a set environment where you don't even have to fight for anything, your food is set up for you, what do you learn? Your body does not adjust or is not ready for when things get tough. I mean, on my recent hike, there's a gorge that we go to. It's called the St. George's Gorge, close to my house there. There's like a stream that is unusually, sometimes full of water. And you see, we've had a dry spell, and especially this year for the past several years. And this winter, we've actually had a lot of rainfall. So these normally dry environment have now been completely transformed. So that means that, all the places that we're talking about would have to, you have to walk from rock to rock to cross these little creeks that now are flooded. And there's been floods in Victoria, where I live, lately. At first it's a bit fun, and I started feeling like a kid again, but I was also mindful of what my kids would be doing. So I actually, really started becoming careful. And my little girl is like, "Hey, you're going to sleep off that one." And then I was like, "Nah, I'm used to this." And at first I listened to my gut, right? And then I tested out the rock, and then it was not wobbly. So I found a spot where I could actually step on. And then my logical brain said, you know what? If this is not wobbly and everything else, well, how can I sleep? So I put my whole foot onto it. And guess what happened? I slipped. I ended up waist deep in like really chilly water. And had I actually trusted my instincts, I wouldn't have actually scratched down, that trail with water permeating through my hiking boots. Now I've got a question for you. How many times in business have you actually felt sure that something was good, but you ignored your intuition? Or you ignored the calls of other people that would have told you, hey, watch out, you might slip. Maybe your gut told you that, maybe that new client would be a time suck. Because there's a lot of those people out there. Or, taking on a particular project would actually cost you more money than you would actually make. Next time, I want you to believe it. Trust your gut. Had I trusted my gut, I wouldn't have been wet. I wouldn't have fell down. And one thing that you would also do, especially when you go out in nature, because like I said, man, this feeling of awe is a powerful thing. And the lessons that you get out of that, man, is more than you sitting and eating popcorn and watching some gymnast do some crazy acts, in a controlled environment. You need to be facing your fears all the time. And when you're able to face your fears, this has got surprising results. See, I was talking about, before I fell, I told you I was hopping from rock to rock, and I was being funny. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, I knew I'd done this before, and I wanted to prove to my kids that I'm brave. But I actually began to feel nervous about falling in, and I kept looking at my little girls. But my little girls were actually much more careful. You know why? Because, they're closer to the ground, so to speak. So it's not much of a fall for them. I mean, what could get worse than just simply getting wet on a hike? So I amped up the fear to a point of I was now irrational, and I was now maybe standing on one foot and actually, just being obnoxious. And then it happened. I fell in, and fear realized. But you know what? It wasn't very terrible as I thought. Yes, the water was cold, but my world did not end. All right? I mean, I scraped a bit of my leg. It was pretty bad. But even that was okay. I realized that the fear that I had was being, the fear that I had of falling, or the fear that I had for my little girls, was unfounded. Even if they fell in, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Sometimes we actually have to experience our worst fears in order for us to actually realize the truth about, life. So what is it that you're fearing right now in business? I mean, are you afraid to reach out to a marketing consultant to actually help you start, scale, and grow a business that's profitable and enjoyable? Are you afraid of investing in your marketing? Because I've been talking to a coach right now, and I told him I can take you from 200K to 2 million. And he's like, I want to see proof. I'm not sure if your claims are warranted. You know what I mean? Yes, I can see the solutions that you're putting out there, but I want to see proof. You see, people want others to guarantee that their success is going to be guaranteed. What guarantees are you putting for yourself? What guarantees are you asking off of yourself? Do you guarantee yourself that you're going to be successful? What is it that you're fearing in business? Because every time when somebody says, I want to see reviews, I want to see more, how more would you want to see? Like I've been talking about the back of my hand. You will never have the same results as anybody else because we are born different. So what is that fear that you have in business? Is it a leap to grow in your business, investing in your marketing, or maybe expanding your product line? What is actually holding you back? What's the worst thing that could actually happen? I mean, if it's failure that you're afraid of, let me tell you something. Failure is when you're actually learning. If it's failure, you want to understand that it's not the end of the world. All right? We have this preconceived conception that everything has to be a success. But if everything is a success, then you're not learning. So once you face your fears, you realize that you have the power to do more than you can when you move past them. There's a time when I almost lost my business. I'm not going to go down into that. But I went past that fear and I surrendered, and I was like, you know what? My business doesn't define who I am. And guess what? All of a sudden, whatever was happening at me that time just disappeared. I faced that fear head on. And then I woke up the next morning and all that had disappeared mysteriously. That's the power of nature, man. Face your fears. So if you're like me, I mean, you find lessons all around you. Like I I'm a student. I'm an avid learner of just about anything else. Nothing is just the way it is. I mean, the tree starts off as a seed and then it grows into this shady, leafy organism. It doesn't go and find a coach to ask it, how do I grow really good and strong leaves? How do I grow really strong and agile roots? It just is. We already have all this information inside of us. We just need to go places that might spark it for us. And maybe if you're waiting for the sign or for a sign, this podcast might be it. So like I said, if you're like me, you might find inspirations and lessons all around you. And being an entrepreneur or being a coach or consultant or, a small to medium business means that you are that type of person that consistently needs to learn to improve themselves. The more you learn, the more you earn. Do you know what I mean? So if you're going to be learning, you might as well learn from a cheaper classroom. And I suggest nature, because you know why? In nature, nothing is everything happens for a reason. And when you're in there, it's not a controlled environment. And if you remember when I started this podcast, I was talking about the light. You just flick a switch and then there's light. But when it's night, it's night. Outside, you can't, turn the sun on at your own convenience. If it's hot, it's hot. If you're walking in a desert, there's no way you can just, switch on the aircon and things of that nature. I really want you to ignite the feeling of awe inside of you, inside of your business, so that you can create a business that's profitable and enjoyable. And guess what happens? When you now know exactly who you want to go after, you identify your target market, you clarify your message, and you, my friend, will have a business that's profitable and enjoyable, all powered by all the things around us and nature, which is an actual free university. I can't wait to see what you're going to do with this information today. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, let's continue the conversation in the Live Long Digital community. Become a Live Long Digital community member today. This community is for ambitious entrepreneurs and small business owners with the drive to take control of the future of their businesses and achieve huge success without stress and overwhelm. As you heard, Prosper can help you by teaching you marketing strategies that work. So look no further than the Live Long Digital community of entrepreneurs and highly successful business owners. Join our community today. Find us on www.community.livelongdigital.com.au. Network with other driven entrepreneurs and find the expert guidance you need to take your business to the next level. www.community.livelongdigital.com.au